Going live. This is the first time we've done it. Hi, we're live, it says. Good morning, good morning. Hello to
Hello.
everybody. Hello, greetings from the Oregon coast for me.
And from the East Coast for me.
I'm going to shut actually this light off in the background. I should have done that before.
I guess I should say something more
This is great
interesting.
content.
Yeah, sorry. I was just waiting for you to come back.
No,
It's
it's
fun.
good.
I'm watching the stream, but it's on delay, so we're not the most expert streamers yet, but we're
We
gonna
are
get
the.
there.
Are you kidding me? Like that subscribe button and follow us for all the details. All right. Good morning to you out there. Let's see. I'm trying to see if we have um, shows we have concurrent people are watching. I'm gonna see. Um, Chat. Can you guys give us a thumbs up if you can hear me? And can you give how we do if you can hear Ira? Ira, go ahead and say hi.
Yeah, give me a smiley face if what my volume is.
Smiley face for Ira. Thumbs
Smiley
up.
face if it's good. Yeah. We're just trying to do a volume check.
Volume check, check, check. Ira, what did you have for breakfast? Oh no, it's lunchtime for you. 9, 10, 11, 12. What are
I
you
was up
having?
late last. I was up late last night, so I had a late breakfast slash brunch. Um, I had an apple, I had some almonds, and I had a um, homemade oat cake that I made through a recipe that my wife has iterated on many times. We have done a lot of playtesting on
On the
this.
oatcake.
Like, yes,
you've
seriously, a lot
you've
of
min maxed
playtesting.
your oatcake. Okay.
We
When you say
really
oatcake,
have.
I'm thinking of like uh, what are those things
I
like? They're crunchy, like that kind of thing, or like an actual
no.
cake with oats in it.
Sorry, no, it's not an actual cake. That would be cool if I was eating cake for breakfast. No, I'm trying to manage cholesterol, and apparently oats are a like really good like
Yeah,
anti-cholesterol
they like
food.
absorb cholesterol, and
Yeah,
yeah, it's weird.
yeah. And I hate oatmeal. I'm sorry, but I don't
Oh
like the
man.
taste. The taste is fine. It's just that it's so mushy, and I don't like mushy food. And so if you bake the oats in some sort of like little like circular round thing, then it's I like the flavor is good. So I have it's
Okay.
like oats and apples and cinnamon
I wonder
and
if
a
you're
bunch.
making your oatmeal wrong, because there's a lot of ways to make oatmeal. Also, steel cut oats. If you've ever
No,
tried
seriously,
those.
no. I mean, she's a very good cook. No, I don't think I've tried a
Because
lot of oatmeal in my
okay,
life.
okay.
I'm willing to like I'm scientific about it. I'm willing to try a lot of things.
Uh,
Um, Oatmeal, not
Good deal.
good for
This
me.
is this is what people really wanted to tune in and see.
I'm sorry.
Breakfast
Sorry,
talk with
shouldn't
no,
have.
no. This is great. Um,
We'll talk about Arydia now.
we'll talk about Arydia. Hi, good morning. I'm Cody Miller. I'm joined today by.
Oh, sorry, I was reading chat. My name is Ira Faye. Nice to see you all.
Hi, nice to see you. Um, yeah, so we're gonna start out. We just wanted to start with a topic just to sort of get things going, and then we'll start taking questions from the chat. So if you guys are asking questions right now, sorry, I can't do two things at once. So we'll try and get into those in just a couple minutes. So we thought this morning it would be kind of fun just to talk about resources in Arydia, and specifically sort of the evolution of resources. So um, in Arydia, one of the most important resources is your actions and how many actions you get on a turn. And so that has evolved quite a bit from like previous versions. So in the beginning, you would have, I think, one action per turn, and then the monsters would take an action, and then you would take an action, and those actions were shared by players. So um,
Right.
every turn was very was completely freeform, and so there was trying to think how to say it. You could. Oh, hi David. Good morning. We're live.
Yeah, I got all the punishment bricks moved to the other pallet, so I think I'm ready to come back in the
All
office.
right,
Okay.
great. Good morning, David.
Good morning.
Um, yeah, so originally actions were shared by players. So you would get a number of actions on the player turn, and then you would divide those up among players, which was kind of a fun idea. And if you're playing in solo, it's cool because you could have like, okay, the warrior's going to take one action, and then the rogue's going to take two actions. But in playing it, when I started playtesting it without just me in groups, that was not as fun because there tended to be a lot of quarterbacking and a lot of whoever knew the situation best would take more actions, and then players who were not as verbally aggressive would not get as many turns, and so that has evolved and changed. Another thing that we've worked on is the resource of combo, which is kind of a newer resource, and Ira actually came up with that. So do you want to talk some about that, Ira?
Yeah, yeah, of course. And I just want to acknowledge people are saying some cool things in chat. I am going to take some notes as we go, so we'll make sure we have time to touch on things that people are mentioning in chat. In terms of combo, basically it came out of a design goal to have a shared resource. So Cody basically said, look, we want so Cody had been working on combat for a long time, and then he gave me a little bit of time to work on it and said, hey, take a look at what I built. Here are some of the design goals. And one of the design goals was that we really wanted players to cooperate in a meaningful way, where what you did on your turn matters to what I do on my turn. And a lot of games have a shared resource, but we also wanted to get those cool moments where you feel like, I do this thing, and then you do this thing, and then we do this other thing, and it's like, boom, we did a giant move, super move, like go us. And so having a resource that you can sort of accumulate and build up, and then spend to trigger a cool action really worked well as an idea. But thinking back on an earlier version, just to tell a little bit of the history of
Oh
it.
yeah.
We had a version where, and this was like the first version, where anybody could spend combo at any time.
Which is
And
a great idea.
yeah, and it is, I mean, it is kind of a cool idea, but it led to very tricky timing issues when we got into multiplayer, and like who was going to spend what. And there were sometimes situations where two different people both wanted to spend the combo, and then you had kind of a bad moment where you're like, but I want to spend the combo, but I want to spend the combo, and then the active player had to decide, you get to do it. And that wasn't what we wanted. And
Yeah.
so I think the that led to being able to, before we had basically effectively all combo skills were reactions or free actions is basically what that system was. And then once we realized that, we sort of came up with the sort of identification for the skills to identify what kind of skills they were.
Yeah. I remember talking to you about it. I was like, here's what I really want is I would love for us to be able to start combat and have none of this resource. And then I want like you take a turn and sort of build it up, and I take a turn and build it up, and then you spend it. And you came up with this you're like, what if we just had a resource like on every skill you like, and this at one point we had skills on cards, and you're like, you play a card and that has that resource on it, and then I play a
Oh,
card,
right.
and then you can cash those cards in, and we're like, this is really cool, like this idea of like build it, build it, build it, spend it, and that and the more you build, the more like the bigger payoff you get for those skills, and that's been a real fun. Um, like I really think we've nailed that as far as a design. Like here's what we really wanted, and here's how it works. I feel like that it's been very satisfying to like set that design goal, and now it's like very real of like I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna build like a bunch of combo and then we unleash that. Like that feels I think that feels really good. So
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. I forgot we had actions on cards, and then the different cards. There was like a tension between you would have like maybe a weaker action, but it would generate more combo, and
mm-hmm.
you'd spend that card. It would go to the middle, and then you'd get the cards back. And so there was some desire to actually spend the combo because it would give you your action cards back.
Right, yeah, that was a
That
fun system.
yeah,
It definitely was a different feel of the game, and if I remember correctly, the main reason we moved away from the cards was because you spent the majority of your time looking at the cards, and we really wanted focus of play to be on the map and the player boards and your skill tokens on there for those things to really be the center of attention. And yeah, so I think all those
yeah.
things worked out. Um, and then we have a couple other resources that we'll talk about. So one is
Wait, Cody,
yeah,
can I
yeah,
say
yeah,
one other thing about combo?
sure.
Somebody asked in the chat, we'll get back to more chat questions, but
Sure.
somebody asked in the chat I saw about using combo in true solo.
Yeah.
And absolutely, you absolutely get to use it. Basically, combo. So in the current design, everybody has skills and actions that they can take to increase the combo meter in single player or in one single character playing or four characters playing. Everybody has skills that will increase combo, and then everybody has skills that spend combo.
Mm-hmm.
So in solo it works totally fine. You have skills that gain combo, goes up and up and up, and then you're the only one who gets to spend it because you're the only one playing. In a multiplayer game, everybody makes it go up with various skills and everybody can spend it. But obviously in multiplayer you can do something like I'm gonna take a bunch of skills on my mat that generate a bunch of combo for the team,
Yeah.
and then everybody else is going to end up spending it. They're going to have some big combo spending skills that otherwise they wouldn't be able to fuel, except for the fact that we've coordinated, and I'm going to be able to generate a bunch of it for the team. So there are a lot of different builds that you
Yeah.
can do.
Yeah. A lot of options for like synergies and complementary character builds and stuff. Um, yeah, but yeah, as Ira said, these things, all these systems translate over to solo really well. And with solo, you can, if you wanted, you can play a party of four characters. That's totally
Sure.
doable. Um, but yeah, in true solo, it absolutely works. Um, and let's see. I was just going to talk about another resource that we use in combat, which is mana, which is your MP. And our design goal with mana, because Ira was very adamant a lot of times of like, Cody, can we just have one resource? We just want one resource. And for me, I'm like, but I can see like I need to have a red bar, a blue bar, and a green bar. Like um, that's like nostalgia role playing games. For me, I want these resources, and I don't want Arydia to feel like a nerfed sort of small version of a game. Like I want it to feel like a real RPG. What that means to me, and I know a lot of people have different tastes in what that means to them. But for me, having these different resources and having them matter, it has been a design goal for me this whole time. And so one of our resources, mana, is sort of a special resource in that it's only we've designed it that it's only refreshed when you rest at town. And so the cool thing about that is we can tie mana to certain skills that we know you can't just use them all the time. And so we can give those skills like some special extra powers or some extra oomph. When you use them, you're like, okay, this is a skill that like I'll only be able to refresh this back at town. So I want to kind of be careful when I use it. But when I use it, it feels really good. And yeah, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about our choice of having mana and combo as resources?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it for a long time, but I think I think where we ended up is really strong because it lets us do different things with those different resources. Combo is something that starts at 0 every combat, and you can basically relatively easily get it up quite high and then trigger some powerful skills in combat. But once the combat is over, it drains back down to 0. And mana just gives us different tools to play with. Mana starts high when you leave town and then slowly dwindles to 0 as you spend it. And the only way to get it back is to go back to town. So we can do, for instance, you can also do some out of combat skills empowered by mana. So for instance, one of the skills that we show off very early, I wouldn't say this is a spoiler because it's a starting item for the Path of Light. They have a healing skill that requires spending a mana out of combat. And if we didn't have that, that's just like there is no combo out of combat. Combo only exists within combat. So it was nice to have that additional resource, I think.
Yeah, and we've been intentional with some things like healing and specifically things like, is it the optimal play to like kite monsters so that you can get combos so that you can heal? And we wanted to try and eliminate things that were encouraging you to play in ways that aren't fun. And so we've been very conscious about like, okay, if we're going to do a healing skill, it can't be combo based, because if we have a combo based healing skill, then maybe you will destroy most of the monsters but leave one monster and then run away from it and generate a bunch of combo and then heal, and that's it's kind of fun to break the game, but that's not like, as designers, I think what we want is for you to be playing the game in the most fun way. And so we've been really conscious about which skills use which resource, and in playtesting trying to be wise about how we implement those in a way that reinforces the game as a cohesive whole. So let's see. Do we want to talk about stamina and traveling? Okay, so our next resource is stamina. That's the green resource, and I'll just hold one of these player boards so people can see. You've got your resources. There goes my dice. What did I roll? A 10. So your hit points here. This is your health. I don't think you guys need any introduction to that. Mana, what we were talking about here, your mana points, and then your stamina. And so our design goal with stamina as a primary characteristic is what allows you in sort of your non-combat, primarily non-combat resource. So it does have uses in combat, but the primary goal with stamina was we really want overworld travel to feel like you're going on an adventure that you have to plan, and there's some logistics involved in the traveling. It's not just we go here, we go here, we go here. And so to that end, we leverage mana. And so as you're exploring the map, your characters will basically need to spend stamina to travel further. And so what this does with the overworld map is you will kind of start out in a town, you'll rest, and then you'll leave from there exploring the hexagons of the overworld map. And so this is where you start the game. And so as you're going out and exploring, you'll sort of run out of mana by doing those explore actions. Oh, sorry,
stamina.
Out of stamina, and then you'll need to travel back to rest and get it back. And so it makes this nice
loop.
Yeah, this sort of loop where you feel like, oh man, we can't just keep going forever out here. We do need to come back, and we've provided some fun thematic things like knapsacks that you can carry food in. When you eat food, it will increase your stamina. And so you get this sort of, we're going on an adventure, we need to stop and rest and eat. There's some skills in the game like camping or making camp or cooking that can increase your overworld travel experience. And so, um, yeah, I feel like I was rambling.
No, that was great, Cody. And I want to add a couple things to that. So the stamina resource SP is, as Cody said, primarily around travel, but because it really does give you some benefits in combat. Not it's not like the main thing, but it can help you to have some in combat. You do care about being exhausted.
Oh
Like
yeah,
you can spend your stamina down to zero traveling somewhere far away and then go have a battle, but like you're gonna feel that in the battle different than if you start a battle at full stamina.
yeah,
So stamina helps sort of stamina in combat, just to give people a sense of that, helps you move a little faster. And if you get knocked down, it can help you sort of recover and still act beyond sort of what your hit point limit is.
yeah.
So having it in combat does matter, which makes it matter for travel also.
Hmm.
That's why it's meaningful.
Yeah, and one of the design goals is for the game to feel integrated, like you're exploring a world, and those different systems interlock in interesting ways um, that make it feel like a whole adventure, not just like, well, this part and this part, but it's like, wow, oh, all these things like tie together. So one um, mechanic we have is in the overworld, there is an actual exhaustion mechanic. So you're traveling through the hexagons, and if you, excuse me, if you run out of stamina here, or if you become exhausted on the overworld, you actually will take a card from the deck, which is threat card 90, and you'll shuffle it into the threat deck, which is basically the combat deck. And that card says you're exhausted. And so you're traveling through the overworld map, and you'll have to shuffle a card into the combat deck, and you won't see that combat card, that card, for a while until you get into combat. At some point,
And it gets shuffled every time.
yeah, it gets shuffled, and so it'll come back basically not to haunt you, but
To bite you.
you. It's just another way for it to like, oh, this overworld travel really matters, not just that, oh, we ran out of our whatever and we have to go back to town, but like this is going to come back later, and that feels really good. You can also, if you go to a town, you can rest at an inn and pay money to remove exhausted cards from your deck, and so there's a lot of sort of these mechanics working together. Um,
There were a few travel related questions, and I saw there were some healing questions earlier, but I'll
sure.
just talk about the travel questions right now since we're talking about that. King Graham Johnson asks, can you only rest in town or can you sleep out of town? And the basic idea is, you know, players come back to town to repair their items and to refresh their mana and to rest and then stuff like that. But there are some classes that support more travel. And part of what we want with the skill trees is to give players the chance to make interesting sort of builds with their characters and do the things that you would expect those classes to do. Anytime that I asked Cody, well, what do you think about this? He was always like, we want it to feel like a ranger. We want it to feel like a warrior. So we thought a lot about how those classes should feel. And so, for example, you know, the ranger has stuff related, you know, to the wilderness and travel and things like that. So I think I guess to answer your question, I would say mostly in town, but yes, there are some things you can do out of town. Trey Eck asks, is there only one town? No, there's definitely more than one town. So you'll be
Yep.
exploring the map and finding it.
That's part of the fun, yeah. Finding different towns and what's involved there. So towns have sort of two aspects. I don't feel like this is spoilers, but most towns will have a point of interest card, which will look something like. Where's my point of interest?
It's in the POI part of the deck.
Thank you.
In 10.
I don't think I have. So you have a town card with town actions on it, and that is accessed from the overworld. So we get to this town, and that would be where the rest action would be. All towns that you visit will have a point of interest card that has the town actions for that specific town.
Can you show a zoomed in version
hang
of
on.
the maybe I'm
Can I
lagging
not
on
do
the
that?
view, but can you show a zoomed in version of the starting tile so they can see how the point of interest works?
I'm gonna try.
Oh, okay.
It's hard to get this thing to. There we go. Focus. Can you focus? All right, so it's a little bit. You can see it has a big 0 and a POI 1. So POI 1 would be your town actions. So most towns will have somewhere like a location that you can actually zoom in and explore on those zoomed in maps, but it will also have a point of interest. And that's, so originally everything was done in your town map, like on the big map. So it was like, okay, you like walk over to the inn and then you can take the sleep action, and then you walk over to the market and you can take the buy action, and that sounds really cool. If it was a video game, that would be a great way to go. But what happened is in the game, after you've done it once, you don't really want to like pull out the big map and go into that location and then pull out a smaller map for the market and then a smaller map for the, and then talk to the NPC that you, and so it was like, it became apparent pretty quickly in playtesting, hey, we need to have like an easy access point for each town to have these systems. And so every town has a point of interest that,
Exiles camp.
so this is the Exiles camp has these town actions, that this one you can rest, you can get supplies, you can access your stash, that's all the items and stuff that you're not currently have equipped, and you can level up, you can repair your goodies and all that. So every town has a card kind of like this. Not every town has the same actions. Some towns have actions that cost money. So like at a different town, the rest action might cost money. But you always have this Exiles camp that you can go back to and do things for free. So if you run out of money, there's systems in place that you're like, hey, or if you don't want to spend your money because it's too precious, you can travel back to the Exiles camp at any time and get all your stuff for free. So.
Bonewalker and Ken M are both asking, can you travel back and forth to places that you've already traveled? So is it easier, basically, or faster to travel places that you've already been? And the answer is yes. It is easier to travel places that you've already explored than places you have not explored.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say it's like, it's not like guaranteed trivially. You can't just teleport to places you've already been. Right. But it is easier to go places you've already been.
Yeah, and we've play tested the Overworld travel system with there's the travel deck and the travel tokens that with our last stretch goal we just unlocked wooden travel tokens, which would be really nice. We'll be upgrading these the cardboard tokens to wood ones. You can't see them; they're all washed out. So we're going to be upgrading those to wooden, which will be really nice. But we've play tested the Overworld travel system quite a bit, and one thing that we wanted is for you to care about the travel system. And so in previous versions of it, I don't know why I'm so blurry. Sorry. In previous versions of it, if we got to the point where it was like, I'm just flipping cards, I don't care, it doesn't matter, that wasn't good. And so in this current version, I feel like we are really in a good spot where as you're flipping cards, it really matters. So like if you become exhausted, that card that gets shuffled into the combat, the threat deck later, that really is important. And so it makes that, because that's important, it makes the overworld travel important. And so yeah, these sort of interlocking systems. It is also very quick. If you're not exploring new hexagons, if you're traveling across hexagons that you've previously been on, it's very quick. You're not spending, hours like, oh man, having to upkeep all these different systems. You're basically flipping a card and then possibly flipping a token. If that token's already been flipped, then you would get exhausted. If and so there's a little bit of a press your luck mechanic. It's like, well, we have if you have no tokens face up, if they're all inactive, then you can travel. That's fine. As soon as one becomes active, now you have a percentage chance of becoming exhausted. And so as a group, you can say, do we want to spend 1 stamina per player or 1 stamina per character to reduce the chance that we'll be exhausted, or do we want to keep going on? And so you make that choice, and then you flip another card, and then you can make that choice again. And sometimes some groups are like, let's just press our luck, it's fine. And some groups will be like, no, let's spend a stamina every time. We don't want to take any chances. Let's travel carefully. And that can feel really fun. And again, as Ira said, we have some skills in the game that if you wanted to make a build that helped with overworld travel, you can do that. And so that can feel really fun of you go to town, you set up your character for overworld travel. Maybe you, instead of carrying 1 knapsack, you have 2 knapsacks, and you're like, okay, we're loaded down with food, and you've got some skills that help you in the wilderness. And then you do a bunch of exploration, and then you go back to town, and you're like, all right, now that we've explored some spots, let's gear up for some combat and change our build, that kind of stuff. So, good.
Yeah, that's great.
So good.
There are a couple of questions in chat. Cody, do you want me to?
Yeah, we can stop talking specifically about resources and do some chat stuff.
Some of them are about resources.
There were a couple of questions. I don't know if we should try and go back in order. Yeah, I kind of want to jump back to some of the questions that we had earlier. There were 2 people, New LGH and Chris, both asked about healing related stuff. And as someone who really enjoys playing a healer character in RPGs, that's meaningful to me. So maybe I'll just touch those. Those are really old, but I'll answer them now. So solo play. Chris was asking about solo play and healing, and I would say we want all classes to be playable in solo, for sure.
Yep.
But we do not promise that all classes are equally easy to play in solo.
Definitely.
It may be the case that some classes may be, better or worse in solo play. But to me, and I guess Cody, you can comment, but to me, that's actually the fun of true solo.
Oh, for sure.
If you're playing by yourself, you're like, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do this. And I see, some of these skills might be a little better in a larger party, or, I'm going to have trouble in this area. One of the nice things about being in a party is you can sort of balance out each other's strengths and weaknesses. Not every class is expert at everything. That's not fun.
Right.
So that's what you get with true solo. And we like that.
Yeah.
So I just want to.
Yeah, I think honestly, you've hit on a really good thing. Making true solo actually it's you out there and you've got to support yourself is really, to me is really fun, because with stamina in a group, you're traveling, and it's I ran out of stamina, it's fine, we'll still go into combat. In solo, you're I need that stamina. If I get knocked down, I have to have that stamina to be able to give myself chances to get back up in the middle of combat. And so you are going to need to play more carefully as a solo adventurer, just like you would in real life. If you were going out by yourself, it's more dangerous. And so I think that makes it a really fun thing. And for people who like a challenge, it's I'm going to play as a character that's the hardest to play in solo, and I'm going to solo it. And that could be like a personal achievement for you. I think could be really fun. So
And the other thing that we should remind everybody of is when you get loot and you have your skills, like the skills that you get are specific to your class,
mhm.
and the loot that you get is specific to your class, and that's going to sort of play to the strengths of whatever that class is.
Some
But
of the loot. Yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
the path loot,
yeah.
the loot that you're getting out of your path chest.
Hmm.
And I think we're basically about to say the same thing, Cody, which is that, but there's this whole other treasure chest of loot that are generic items that any class can use. So that's one of the ways we're balancing true solo play against a larger party play. When you're a true solo player and you get an item from that generic loot chest, like that's yours. There's nobody else who you're going to share that with, and that can help round out, whatever your weaknesses are. Some of those generic items, if you choose them wisely, can help round out sort of your skills.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, yeah, those are some ideas. So hopefully that'll be fun for people to experience. We both really care about the true solo play, so we're hoping it's going to be supported. You can be sure it's going to be supported because we're supporting it. New LGH asked about healing in and out of combat. We want healing in combat to matter.
Yeah.
So the healing, the characters who have more healing abilities, like your ability to heal in combat, will definitely make a difference in combat.
Yeah.
If you play a party, either because you're playing true solo or you've just chosen a party build where you don't have like a primary healing character, like obviously you will approach combat differently. But it should still be good and fun and balanced. I would say if you don't have a primary healer character in your party, you may end up healing out of combat more, obviously, because you might need to go back to town to rest, or you'll use other sort of items and things like that.
Mm-hmm. And we do have some things that I think are really fun. So the Path of Light, like the cleric has a satchel, and that satchel is full of bandages, and they can use those to heal. And so one of the things you can do is one of the skills you can take is prepare bandages. So normally you could pay 1 copper at town to fill up your bag full of bandages. But if you want, you can take this skill that says prepare bandages, where you can spend mana to put bandages back into your healing kit. And so what's cool about that is that skill only works outside of combat. And so if you're going to go into combat and you don't have any bandages in your healing kit, like, do I want to spend this mana now and then I'm ready for this combat? I'm like preparing these bandages, it takes me time or whatever. Or do I want to save this mana for like an attack? And I think those kinds of things, like actually feeling like you need to prepare for a combat coming up, to me that feels like really fun. And so that's another aspect of the in and out of combat healing. So
yeah. I think Smiggy was asking a question related to what I was saying, so I'm just going to jump in and answer that, which is, are there, they said, there's shared loot. And just to be clear, there's some shared loot, there's some that you just get that's always for you. Are there shared skills? And that was the other thing that I wanted to touch on, which I forgot earlier, so I'm glad you asked that question, which is that different playable characters have different starting skills. So, for instance, if you're playing a dwarf, you get a specific starting skill for playing that dwarf. If you're choosing to play as the elf, you get a different starting skill. So there are a lot of permutations. I wouldn't call those shared skills, but those are permutations to modify a particular path.
Mm-hmm.
that can matter.
Yeah. And like one thing I think you've noted is like the dwarf skill, as it is currently, can really help in solo. And so that could be like which character you choose will also affect.
It's not equally balanced between all those choices.
It's not.
It's asymmetric.
It's asymmetric. Yeah. Which is fun.
I have a question. from a bunch of different people,
Mm-hmm.
different things. They're asking about what kind of quests there are. They're like making guesses about like can
Okay.
locations change.
Mm-hmm.
Would a fair answer for a lot of these, I can like find them in the chat. Would a fair answer be like the system supports a lot of options?
I mean, yeah. So
So like
design.
without spoiling anything.
Yeah, without spoiling anything, as far as like quests and
How the world
systems
develops.
go,
Yeah.
the an overall design for the system is like I really wanted to run a D&D campaign for my friends, and that was sort of the genesis for designing Arydia. And I thought, can I design a system where I can do any of the things that I would do in a weekly D&D session, and then just like package that up basically. And it has taken, I mean, this was 7 years ago, and so it's taken a lot of thought and time developing these different interlocking systems, and not just to like it's easy to design a system, but to design a system that works smoothly and has like a really streamlined gameplay loop. And so I feel really confident that with the system we could do almost anything. So you can have the overworld tie into different parts of like the locations that you're exploring, and the locations you're exploring can tie into combat, and combat can tie. So everything can kind of tie in together. I honestly only feel like we're limited by our imaginations of like what could we do. And this has been one thing that David loves to do is I'll be working on something and David will come in and have like 7 ideas. He'll be like, what if we do this and this and this and this? And I'm like, yeah, we can do all of those things. But like right now it's more like time and like what are we going to fit into this game exactly. And
the
so
woodcutters should be able to use lumber as agriculture credits.
So there's a lot of flexibility with the system. So
Cody, there are a few people in chat who are asking about a little bit more about the magic system. So I wonder if you might want to talk a little bit about that without giving spoilers. Some people were asking, are there particular spells that you can cast? Like somebody was asking, can you cast? Jonathan Barth was asking about fireball spells, and somebody Blake was just saying, I'm interested in that too. And I wonder if there's a way to answer that, because we know that all paths can spend MP.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe just could you talk a little bit more about MP?
Can I add one part to that question too?
Yeah.
Sure.
And maybe this might help with your answer, because I get this question. Could you answer the no magic, low magic, or high magic question, like a la D&D?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with Arydia, I think a lot of fantasy that I read and interact with, I think putting a magic system front and center has been very important. In a lot of current media that I consume, like very specific, lined out. This is very, and for me, I feel like when I have the fantasy that I have really enjoyed, the magic system is known by the author and is very like clear to them, but doesn't need. It is not. I'm trying to think. Is not
explicated.
Yeah, explicated. As far as like, we're gonna sit down and run through. Here's how everything works, and so for me, I think part of the fun in Arydia is exploration, and part of that exploration is like the maps and stuff. But I think also exploring the world and how the world works. And so I feel like a lot of these answers are more fun for you to experience. My design is for you to experience those in the game and discover it for yourself. And so going into a world that you don't know exactly how the rules work is part of the fun to me. And so my job is to design something fun for you to explore, and your job will be to sort of seek it out. So that's sort of like as far as big picture magic system. So for the paths that we have revealed, probably the most magical of those right now is the path of light, and they have some. We would. I don't know that you would call them spells in Arydia, but they have some skills that are magical in nature, and theirs very much have to do with light, which is why it's called the Path of Light. And yeah, as far as other stuff, we'll, I think, stay tuned for some updates later this week, and I think maybe you'll have some fun seeing what we have to show. So, is that fair, Ira? Did you want to add
That
anything
was
else?
great.
Right.
No, I think that's really great. Let's jump to another question because their questions are being generated faster than we're answering them.
Yay!
So a couple people have asked about money as a shared resource or squills and sort of. So King Graham Johnson asked about is money shared? So money is not shared. You have individual money, but I believe, Cody, in the rules you can give money to other people. So if you want to share it, you can.
I don't know. Maybe we'll see.
Okay, all right.
We'll
So
see.
I don't.
Sorry,
Maybe
that's
so.
a little bit of an inside joke for my game group. That is the first question everybody asks, regardless of what game we're playing, is can I give gold to my friend, even if it's a space game and there is no gold. So yeah, so this is one of the specifically the economy is one of the systems that is not fully finalized as far as this is exactly how we're going to do it. Mainly because of player scaling and looking at that as an option um, to mitigate high player counts. And so currently, the current rules as written is you gain money individually, and that's something that we really like. Of like, this is my money. I don't have to share it with other people. I get some more and less. Um, it's possible that we do a little bit of mitigation there to keep higher player counts from getting more money being. I'm trying to think how to say it. Being imbalanced, basically. Um, so we're looking at some of those things. We do have other systems in place to sort of counter that. Like when you take the rest action at town, each person would need to take that individually and pay for their own spot. And so, yeah. As far as squills, so squills is the and resource is the wrong word. So squills is sort of like an overarching um, tally of your journey as a player. And so at one point we had physical tokens for them, and it's basically when you as a player being in exile, when you do good deeds for other people in the land, they will give you this wooden coin called a squel. And that wooden coin is not valuable in that you can't spend it on anything, but it's basically a sign that you have contributed to being a good person in the world, kind of. And so originally we had, you were getting these wooden coins. And it's like, what do I do with these? And it's like, this is how in the narrative, your character is able to show, their value, and hopefully they can earn their way back home. That's sort of like very general, and that's like a very simplified version of like a narrative arc. And so over the course of playtesting, it became very obvious that having all these wood tokens that you never spend on anything didn't make sense from a manufacturing standpoint or from a gameplay standpoint to like, what am I doing with all these things? They look cool, but like, why do I have all these? And so in a few versions ago, we revised the system so that when characters, when you earn a squill, it is represented on a playing card, and that will go into your party's shared inventory space in the index. And so it's a very simple way to like, okay, now you can keep a tally of basically quests completed and and it doesn't take up any extra physical space because it's something we're just printing on a card. It also has the nice secondary effect of if you forget why you earned one of those things, you can just pull the card out and be like, oh, right, that's why I got this. It'll, the text of like the person who gave it to you and why they gave it to you will be right there, and you can put that back in the index. So all of those will be kind of act as a little bit of a journal of your adventure. And so you can look back through all the things that you've done, why you've earned those.
Squil charm necklace as a stretch goal.
Squil charm. Yeah, so I don't know. Does that seem fair, Ira?
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Um, yeah, that's good.
Sorry, I haven't read any of the chat, so I don't know, David or Ira, if you guys have any.
Yeah, I can go to
Sure, Ira.
something new. I guess I want to say one other thing about. I was thinking about not saying this, but I'll say one other thing, which is that about the sharing of loot and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and the generic items are really an opportunity for parties to coordinate and collaborate and have meaningful teamwork. So, at a certain level, maybe it's really useful for me to have that extra spare helmet that we found. But then when, the warrior levels up and gets some extra thing and they're like, okay, I don't need this helmet anymore. Like now I can use that generic helmet. So there's a category of loot that is generic and shareable among all party members,
Mm-hmm.
but but the rules prohibit the warrior from giving their warrior sword to a non-warrior. So
Yeah.
there's some loot that is like, this is just for you, it's special for you, you're a warrior, nobody else can use it. But then there's other loot that can be shared freely. And people have talked about the economy and touching on that. There items that you can buy in town that you're spending your money on that are also, those are all generic items.
Mm-hmm.
So those can also be shared around.
Yeah, and when you say generic, they're not all the same items. I think we give them the current classification as basic items, which
Okay,
are
basic,
not
thanks.
tied to any specific path. So they can still be valuable items and have unique properties. So some like of the basic weapons could be used by any path, but will have unique attack patterns. And so that can be really fun of like, ooh, oh, this isn't specifically for my path, but I really want to like carry this weapon with me. And I think that can be fun. And as far as like the non-shareable loot, this isn't something that we did arbitrarily because we don't want you to have fun. But the main design goal was we want each path to feel unique. And to feel unique, you need to be able to do things that the other paths can't. And so we looked at what if we could just share loot across everything, and we play tested that where only your skills were unique, and that did not provide enough emphasis on your character being special. And so we bumped that a little further and said, okay, what if instead of all the loot is shared between everyone? Because we had that at one point where it's like, I'm playing as the ranger and I drew out this great sword. Cool. I guess I'll not do ranged anymore. And that was kind of fun, but it is a different kind of fun. And for me, trying to achieve this design goal of we want each path to feel special and unique, um, it didn't add into that. And so I feel like this current system is sort of the best of both worlds, where you still get those moments of like random loot or buying loot that you want that is basic and could be used by anybody, but you also have these moments where it's like, this is stuff that's just for me, and nobody else gets to open this box or get the things outside of that, and that feels really good. That it's like, oh, this is stuff tailored just for my path. And I think also that's one thing about like true solo. If you're playing true solo as a ranger, you're going to have a totally different experience. Well, you'll have a significantly different experience than if you played through it again as, say, Path of Shadows or something like that. And so that feels really good of like, okay, I've seen these generic items, but I haven't seen any of this other loot before, let alone, the skills and combo and all that. So cool.
Yeah, I think that replayability piece is key
Mm-hmm.
because the story, the world overall is coherent, but the the fact that you're experiencing that through one lens or experiencing that through a different lens can really make it feel different. So we want to make sure that the paths feel asymmetric but balanced. That's what we're shooting for.
Yeah.
I have a quick question I think would be
Yep.
good. I've seen this in the comments and some messages. People are asking about crafting items. I'm assuming
Mm-hmm.
like similar to like Skyrim, like you're like building
Sure.
things at the blacksmith or like combining things. I thought you could address that and then upgrading items in a similar way.
Mm-hmm.
Is that in the game? There's a lot of
Yeah,
questions
so
about that.
there's no crafting system in Arydia. This was something that I thought long and hard about, and like, do I want to spend a lot of development time and energy into a crafting system? And for me, I appreciate crafting systems in games, but that hasn't been like a traditional for me did not define my experience with RPGs as like I really need to have a crafting system to feel like this is a true RPG. And so that's not something that I put in, and I have felt a lot of I don't know. I feel like there's definitely a request for that, and I want to say like I hear that request, and I don't feel like Arydia is this version of Arydia is the place to explore that because I think to do a really good crafting system, it requires a lot of design and intent to do it really well. And I felt like with all the other systems that we have in Arydia, it the amount of to do a system that would actually do it justice felt outside of the scope of it. And so there's no crafting. Sorry.
But I agree there's no crafting,
Yeah.
but I just want to say that, and I love crafting systems. I use them like I spent more time in Zelda Breath of the Wild cooking than like a lot of other things. And so to me, the essence, one of the essences of a crafting system from a design perspective is, do I get to collect stuff over time as I explore this world and then turn that into something useful for me in an interesting way as I proceed in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Iridia really delivers on that. It's not a crafting system, but I think the loot system overall, and we have an update coming that's going to go into more depth on the loot system. But I think the loot system overall, because of the permutations with the loot that you get out of your path specific chest, the loot that you get from defeating monsters, the loot that you get from buying them in town, and the permutations that you have with the skills that you've earned and the skills that you're going to earn as you decide to traverse through the skill tree, plus all the permutations with all of your other players if you're playing in a larger group.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things combine to make the loot experience to me feel, I mean, it's not crafting, but you are going to be getting equipment upgrades that are going to then sort of, you're going to have to parcel them out among the party. I think that's going to hit a lot of the same beats as
Hmm.
what a crafting system might feel like in some ways. So I'm not saying it's crafting, but I am saying it should still feel good to
It's
acquire more
craft
stuff as you
adjacent.
go. Craft adjacent, fair enough. Craft adjacent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, for instance, like, well, just to talk about that, go a little bit more in depth
Sure.
about it, you get loot and you can sell it in town.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have this piece of loot that I can sell for copper, and then I can use that copper to buy other equipment or do other things with that copper in town.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's not crafting, that's just an economy system. But I am going to is about how long do I hold on to
Sorry, Ira,
piece
you're
of
kind of breaking up.
equipment that I have.
Okay, there,
Okay.
you're back. You're
Oh
back.
well. I was just saying how, like, one of the questions is how long do you hold on to the old piece of equipment
Mm-hmm.
because it might be useful, or do you convert it into cash, which you can then reinvest in other things?
Yeah. Yeah. Good deal. Um, Jonathan Barth wants me to airship him a copy. You got it. Airshipped. I'll throw it. Sorry. Um, did you see any? Either of you guys see any? I feel like if
I
I
let
start reading the chat, it's really hard
Joe.
for me to
Yeah,
focus on.
I'll jump in. So Joe M is asking a really nice question about do we think the question is, do you think all class combos will work with two players? Like, do you need melee and range, or can you do other permutations? Absolutely any permutation should be playable.
Mm-hmm.
That is 100% the plan. I will say that some permutations and some builds may be more powerful than others in certain areas of the game.
Yeah, it's very
So,
true.
the whole game is not just combat. Like, combat is certainly a part of the game, but you have interactions with NPCs, you have traveling in the overland map. Like, there are a bunch of different aspects of the game. So, you might not want to just optimize your party for combat. You might say, we want a party that's going to be really great at, exploring the wilderness and overland travel. And maybe we'll be a little weaker in combat, but that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the fun of a role-playing game is that should you choose, you can. It's like this is the path that speaks to me, and like, yeah, maybe I'm not the best at X, Y, and Z, but like I just enjoy being this like this path. Like that's a lot of fun. I also want to say we have like made an intentional design choice with every path that we wanted every path to have some combat viability, specifically when we're looking at like true solo or like 1 and 2 player counts. So every path has a path specific weapon, at least one, sometimes more, and so you can all deal damage. So there's no paths that don't deal damage, and that damage is a weapon that does not degrade or has a limited number of uses. You always have like I can do basic attacks always, and for me as a player, that feels really good. Of like doesn't matter which path I choose, I'll always be able to do like just some basic damage. Um, which looking at it from a combat stance feels really nice. So they're all viable in that sense. You never are in a situation where it's like, well, I'm just a healer and I can't do anything. It's like, no, you can always whack somebody. So I think that's fun.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. And there's asymmetry there in that, like, maybe the warrior is maybe a little more expert in like melee combat,
Oh yeah,
and other characters might do more range combat, but everybody can dish out damage in some way or another.
totally. And another, this is pretty nerdy, but another aspect is every weapon type. We've tried to give every path a unique weapon attack pattern. So if you've seen how the monsters have hit grids, so I'll just show you. This is the practice dummy, the very first thing. You can see this 2x4 grid. This is just like a generic layout, and monsters will have different layouts, and some of those layouts will have critical points, which would be in between these hit points. There's these little orange icons that if your attack pattern passes through them will trigger damage in another hit point. And so one cool thing about playing a different path is sometimes the critical hits on different monsters will line up for your weapon. And so maybe you're playing as the rogue and your dagger will do a diagonal attack, which will hit a critical, which will do extra damage. And so every combat, we're trying to make it so that somebody feels like, oh man, this works for me. And if you're fighting like a mob of monsters, which is like a group of monsters, we've moved the critical points and the weak points around on the monsters so that even if you're fighting like a group of the same monsters, each one of those individual ones, you might excel at defeating that specific one. And so that can feel really fun at the start of combat. Everybody sort of leans forward and they're like, oh, let me take out this one here. You go for that one because that will work with your weapon. And so that's one way that you're playing a path. Maybe you're not like the most damage dealing, but you can like, oh, this specific monster, I'm going to take this one out. And that feels really fun to be like, I got this one. So that's just from like a minute in the moment gameplay aspect that we're trying to make each individual feel unique and special. So. David or Ira, you're answering questions. You're good.
Yeah, I just typed an answer. I can say it.
Okay.
I mean, we're close to an hour,
Oh
so
yeah.
but maybe I'll just answer. I typed it, but I think it's a nice question, which is Smiggy05 said, will skill attack patterns overwrite the weapon attack patterns? And I think that's worth maybe talking about briefly, which is that every weapon has their sort of basic attack, which has the pattern on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also have skills that will trigger different effects depending on what the skill says. So you always have your basic attack from the weapon, and that's not overwritten by skills. If you choose to trigger the skill, then you say, I'm using the skill, and it says on the skill what that does for you.
Snake, here you go.
So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's just an active one.
So there's a couple. That's your starting skill for the, or your starting weapon for the Path of Valor, and here's a skill for the Path of Wandering. And so this is not, that attack pattern here is not the attack pattern of your bow normally. And so having attack patterns that are unique to a skill is really fun too. So like using those in combat where it's like that pattern lines up with this monster, and then you're doing using all the resources that we talked about before, where it's like I'm generating mana or I'm generating combos so that Ira can use his snipe skill, and then I'm using my sword which cuts across this critical, and there's a lot of sort of things that build on each other, which is fun. So where is my spin attack? Yeah, so spin attack, maybe I should have just shown that. Bum, bum, bum.
Are you telling me there's going to be consistency in weapon types, Cody?
Yeah. So this is really hard to show. We need one of those cool like green screen overhead cameras. So this is the Path of Valor, your starting weapon and a starting skill. So your spin attack skill costs 3 combo. So you have to generate 3 combo, and then you can unleash this attack. So your normal sword attack can hit 1 adjacent monster for up to 2 attack from left to right. Your spin attack can hit every adjacent monster for up to 2 damage from right to left. And if we put a critical, so for example, if we put a critical hit here, your sword could pass through there and hit the critical on the way to hitting that first hit point, and then hit here. If we put which would work with your normal sword, but if you were attacking with the spin attack and it came here and then here, it wouldn't hit that critical. And so just in that one simple reversing the attack, we can set up monsters, and that's like a very basic example. Like that actually matters, and that feels really cool. It's like it's 2 damage, but it's actually it's 2 damage, yes, but it can make a difference, which is fun. So all right, so we're about 10 minutes over time. I just want to say thank you for everybody to joining us. Ira, is there anything else that you wanted to mention before we go?
No, this has been great. I really love the enthusiasm of everybody in the chat and everybody who's been commenting and posting on Board Game Geek. It's like the most exciting thing to have worked on a game for a while and then get to share it with everybody.
Oh, so seriously, it is so much fun. Yeah, and Ira, like we've been talking about some updates coming. You can see we just posted an update on the Path of Valor this morning, right before this, and then there's more updates coming this week. Ira, I was just looking over the draft for the loot update. It's not some nebulous thing. Ira has this whole thing typed up, and so those things are coming this week, and you can look forward to those. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. So.